Well, hello and welcome to the Small Business Briefing, the Thursday edition, and special Thursday, Veterans Day today. And so I thought I'd take a moment just to acknowledge that a lot of veterans, when they leave service in the military and come back to their communities, they start businesses. And we're really proud of veteran-owned businesses, so many across different industries, the type of difference that they make. So thank you to our veterans on this Veterans Day, and thank you for being a part of that entrepreneurial network and the commitment to excellence. Sarah, I think that we've got sponsor recognition and a new member to recognize today.
Yes, we do. Today, thanks to our sponsor, Marana Group, we are welcoming Lake Trade seawall specialists in Hastings. So Ron Handcamp is the owner there, and as their name implies, they install seawalls and retaining walls. So welcome to Ron and team. And again, thank you to Marana Group for your generous sponsorship of the briefing and in helping us welcome these new members every week.
My old stomping ground in Hastings, wonderful community and lots of lakes in the southern part of that. So I imagine they're pretty busy with the retaining walls down there. We have a special guest today that I want to get right to. His name is James Freed. He's the city manager in Port Huron. I've known James for a long time, going back to when he was village manager in Lakeview, and really caught my attention when Lakeview and the city of Stanton essentially combined administrative efforts, and he was essentially a city manager and a village manager at the same time. Really innovative thinker and a commitment to excellence in running government. And but there was an altercation last year with OSHA on a workplace safety issue, and James saw that all the way through to the end and won when it was when that fine was dismissed just a little while ago. And I just wanted to talk with you, James. First of all, thank you for being on the program.
Good to see you again.
Congratulations on the win on that process. I know it was a long one, and since I personally know you, I knew as soon as this issue came up that there was an overzealous, it must have been an overzealous inspector, and that your commitment to doing things well and doing things right is something I just personally know to be true. So, but it took a long time to get through that process. Maybe walk us through some of those early days.
Yeah. So
when
we were one of the first municipalities to actually shut down. So we're getting briefed. We were told 40% death rate. We didn't know. So we actually shut down our facilities on the very first. And I was actually, when I told my staff, I said, either in 14 days, I look like an idiot for overreacting, or this is real and it sticks. And so we took the pandemic very serious. When we were shut down, we invested, and I mean shut down as the offices and facilities were shut down. Our police and fire, our essential services were still running. We spent literally $100,000 on microbial cleaning of our facilities. They'd go in and fog the police cars at night, the fire trucks, and make sure they were clean, the workstations. We sourced a significant amount of PPE. So every employee had masks, hand sanitizers. There were stations set up at every entrance. When you walked in, there was masks and hand sanitizers. We developed our own make sanitizer and cleaner by mixing bleach and water, and we were dispersing bleach water all over the city to be used. The enamel on my desk has actually been destroyed by all the cleaning products used in the last couple of years. And so we were the first municipality in our county to write a responsible preparedness plan. We worked with our local health department to do that. It's been duplicated all over the state. So we took this very seriously from the onset. So one day, a OSHA inspector, unannounced, starts walking through the building. In fact, I'm at lunch. So I get a phone call and they said, "Hey, you need to get up here. OSHA's here." I said, "Well, let them do whatever they want to do, and I'll meet you there." So the guy comes up to my suite, starts demanding, "Where's James Freed? Where's James Freed? I need to see him." So I call back and we sit down, and because we're a collective bargaining city, all the unions get to have a representative in this meeting. So the police, the detectives, the fire, my administrative union. I have union reps. It's a room full about, I'd say 11 people, including my HR staff. We took copious notes. So the guy sits down and says, hey, we have a complaint that says you don't have a response and preparedness plan. And I said, oh, just 1 second. I reached over behind my desk and I handed it to him. I said, here's your response and preparedness plan. He goes, well, we also have a complaint that you're not providing PPE or masks to your employees. And I said, well, which door did you come in? I said, well, actually, it's not relevant. Every single door you walk in, you pass a table of mask and PPE. So I don't know what the issue is. He goes, we're also hearing that masks are personal preference and you don't have to wear them. I said, that's not true. You have to wear them in public spaces. I said, where did you ask this employee? He goes, doesn't matter. And I said, well, yeah, the executive orders at the time were based on proximity. You didn't have to wear a mask if you could socially distance or you were at your workstation. 3 days later, that changed. So everyone has to wear a mask. I said, so when did you ask this employee? Were they at their desk? And he goes, well, I don't know. And I go, okay. He goes, we also have a complaint that you weren't wearing a mask. And I said, oh, well, when and where? I don't know. I didn't ask that. And I said, well, I guess it really doesn't matter. The entire building is under surveillance. What time frame and what amount of video footage would you like? And I'll give it to you on a thumb drive right now. You'll see everyone's wearing masks. He says, I don't want your video footage. And I was like, okay, then he goes, why have you stopped screening your employees? Well, we used to have where you'd line up in the morning and we did it by last names. You'd line up, a fellow employee would take your temperature. And then you would, if you were good, you would go in the building. And if not, you had to go home. Well, it seemed kind of stupid to line up. And so if you're sick, you're just sitting in line with a bunch of other people. So the CDC had their guidance that said, stop doing the in-person screening, have people self-screen at home. So that's what we did. And infamous quote in the Detroit News on that. So anyways, when he left, I honestly thought my OSHA was going to nominate me for like employer of the year or something, because we literally just had it boom, 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 boom. So the guy calls us up about a week later. And I thought here I was going to get my award for being the best, best prepared for my OSHA inspection. This guy, before he left my office, I said, did you roam the building? He goes, yes. I said, did you observe any violation today at all? And he said, no. He himself did not observe. And it's important because he roamed the building unannounced. No one knew. He didn't have a uniform on. He didn't have a badge. He just came in and started walking around. I'm pretty proud of that some random person can walk around the building and everyone's complying with the executive orders, which at that point we were at 145. So that's a lot of executive orders too. So he calls me up a week later and he said, just so you know, I'm writing you a citation on this, 4 points. And I said, but you didn't see a violation. We provided you with the plan. We had everything. How can you do this? Like, you yourself said there was no violation. And he goes, well, you can plead guilty now. I said, well, it's the appeals process. He goes, well, he kind of tongue in cheek goes, well, you'll have to appeal to my supervisor. I'm like, okay. And I said, listen, I'm be honest with you. I was like, I'm never going to pay this and I will go to the Supreme Court. I think that's what everyone says, but whereas it's different here because we have a $121 million operating budget. And I literally have an army of lawyers that are some of the best in the state. And I was like, we'll never settle. So we wrote a very comprehensive appeal and it was immediately denied. So we scheduled a hearing and we started to go to court. At this point, they had offered me a settlement. Oh, I got to miss a big point here. When they issued the citation, literally the next day, the Michigan State Police Emergency Operations Center sent out a statewide press release listing off what I call the witches. Remember John Smith and I'm Not a Witch? Here's all the people that we think are witches. City of Port Huron, all these small businesses got statewide press release. That was the day I knew I would never settle because it was humiliating. I had people calling and texting me like, get your crap together. You're embarrassing. Council members asking like, why aren't we taking care of our employees? It was a huge accusation. And so we wrote this appeal. And in the meantime, they offered me a settlement of $3,000. So I denied the settlement. And then I sent out a statewide press release denying it, which my OSHA was very upset at because they said all their settlements are confidential. Well, nothing's confidential when it comes in my office. This is a public body. So we appealed. It was immediately denied. So we went to hearing, and then what's called the discovery process. So we subpoena, and I have a copy of the subpoena here, emails, notes. And the reason why is they claim they wrote under general duty, but it was actually written under the executive orders. In fact, in the little box where he has to put what he's writing it under, he wrote Executive Order 145. Well, the Court of Claims already gave a declaratory judgment that a violation of an executive order is not automatically a violation of my OSHA. Those rules have to be promulgated through the Administrative Law Act. You can't bootstrap the EO to my OSHA. Not only did the court say you can't do it, they waived the fees and said, don't do this. And so it wasn't until Executive Order 147 that the governor finally took that language out. So then the Supreme Court throws the executive orders out. So we literally thought, well, we're done. The executive orders got thrown out in the Supreme Court. And they said, no. We actually wrote that under general duty violations. It had nothing to do with the executive orders. So we subpoenaed the notes and emails and everything in the case because we wanted to see the communications between the supervisor and the inspector that would show, in fact, they were enforcing the executive orders. In fact, the inspector emailed me on July 22nd and said, quote, as you know, I'm enforcing the executive orders. So we believe both on the facts of the case, there was no violation, we were doing everything right, and on the legal foundation of the case, it's unconstitutional. So even if the EOs were held up, we still believe we had a strong enough case to win. So we begin, so they deny us in the subpoenas, there are no emails. They essentially say it's too burdensome to get the emails, it would take too much staff time. I use Outlook. I can just go to my Outlook and type my OSHA, highlight, and print. So this was a lawful court-ordered subpoena that they ignored for the most part. And so then we go to depose the guy. And I don't know if you ever had a deposition before. I have. And I've been deposed and we get sued all the time, whatever. That's what happens. When I get deposed, I sit down with my army of lawyers and we do like mock interviews and I prep. I don't think this guy ever had prepping. It was disastrous. For 7 hours, we put him under oath. He admitted under oath that he did a substandard investigation. He admitted under oath he didn't ask the questions that would show proximity, key indicators of the investigation. He admitted under oath he saw no violation. He admitted under oath that he destroyed his notes. And in contrary to the statement MyOSHA released this week, he admitted under oath that he deleted general correspondence regarding the case. These were not duplicate emails. These were discussions with MyOSHA senior leadership. He also admitted under oath that at the direction of his supervisor, he is ordered to destroy all notes and emails when he issues a citation. So the problem with that is how does somebody have the ability to have a fair due process when evidence in the case has been destroyed? Evidence that's exculpatory evidence that would show the reason, the how, the why the citation was issued. So this is far greater than Port Huron. So then we essentially said in the email, he kept on saying, well, I did it at the direction of my supervisors, So we made it very clear. If you don't dismiss this case immediately, we're going to depose Bart Pickelman, the director of MyOSHA. It was that a couple days later, we got the email that they're dismissing it. I don't believe they were going to dismiss it because we threatened to depose the director. I'm not sure that's it. I think their inspector was so disastrous under oath that they had no case. They knew it both in the merits and in the legal foundation. I think the point is we spent a lot of money to get here. I spoke to a lot of small businesses who were cited, who said, we didn't do this, but James, they're giving me a settlement for $1,000 and I can't afford $10,000 in legal fees. So they're making business decisions. We had a business in town that was cited because their workstations were within 6 feet of each other. The inspector never measured. It was 8.5 feet apart, but they paid the $3,000 because it was cheaper than doing the process. So we fought. I don't like this attention. We don't like being political. We just wanted our names cleared. That it was disparaging our workers. Imagine you're a firefighter, a police officer, you're donning PPE, you're cleaning your own workstation, you're a water plant operator, a sewer plant operator. I had firefighters who would go home and sleep in their pole barns or in their garages because they didn't want to expose their families to what they were faced with during the day. They did everything right. And then to see in the front page of the newspapers across the state being accused that they didn't. It was such a hatchet job on hardworking folks. And we had the ability to fight. We didn't want to fight. I gave them, they should have dismissed us the moment we appealed. One last thing, under oath, the inspector admitted that when we appealed, the reviewing supervisor never looked at the evidence and never spoke with the inspector. So the appeal was just rubber stamped, denied.
Wow. You know, I mean, hearing it, it's like just a series of things. And obviously you've got all your ducks in a row, you know, all the facts. And frankly, I'm not surprised that you won. And I'm not surprised that you were a model for compliance throughout the whole process. And it's just sad that, you know, it, first of all, it took that long, drug through the mud in the meantime. And then, you know, as you had mentioned, you know, being a municipality, you've got resources that you could challenge these things. A lot of small businesses don't have that, those level of resources, but I think it's an inspiration to others in you doing what they would have wanted to have done.
Well, it's a blueprint too. The legal, the way we won and the way it got dismissed, that legal argument still holds. You cannot bootstrap the EOs to my OSHA violations. The courts have ruled that.
It's a good point. You know, we talked about like the executive orders were thrown out. All of the fines under the executive orders should also be refunded or rescinded. And so they shifted over and said, no, it wasn't the executive orders we're doing under the general duty provision of the OSHA law. And the problem is the definition of compliance under their general duty was the executive orders.
Exactly.
And they had no other rules published at the time. And therefore,
well, and the reason why the records retention is so important is so if you're going to challenge and you want to subpoena those conversations, like, what did you tell your inspector about the case? What did he direct you? Why were you writing this? What were the basis for the general duty? You cannot have due process when everything's destroyed and burned, literally burned.
Yeah, that was quite a detail that the notes were literally burned.
So what they're saying now, and what my OSHA is going to say, first of all, this guy was terribly, like, instead of saying I deleted the emails, he used the words I destroyed the emails. Why? Just say you deleted them. Don't use the word destroyed. I mean, semantics kind of do matter. The issue is when you cannot challenge these when you do not have the documents. And what they're saying is, unless it's put in a case file, it's not records retention. That's how they're interpreting. So if I have this file here, if it's not in this official file, I can go burn and destroy anything in my office. That is not the spirit of intent and records retention. So their loop around is saying, well, if we like to keep things in the case file and we get to decide what goes in the case file. That's not how it works. So I know the House Oversight Committee is going to look into this. We have so much here that hasn't made the light of day. I have subpoenas, the communications with the subpoenas, the transcripts, which, I mean, this guy's under oath. So either someone's lying at my OSHA or someone's committing perjury. I guess it's a jump ball if you want to pick which one. So, you know, again, we never wanted this fight. Honest to God, I just wanted to be dismissed and go away. We have legitimate issues to deal with. I sometimes think in Lansing, your small businesses, business people out there, they're actually running something. They're running a business. They have to make money to survive. They have to be, their accountability is I have to make money, manage my business so my family can eat and we can survive. I have to run a city that provides water, sewer, police, fire. I have benchmarks for success, meaning safe drinking water. The ambulance and fire truck shows up. The streets get plowed. In Lansing, in these state agencies, I mean, what's the level of accountability? What's a good productive day look like? And if it's not good productive day, what's the consequences? I think when you're in a bureaucratic organization that there are no consequences, things like this tend to happen.
Well, I'm confident that you have their attention, and
I don't want their attention. I just want to go away.
Oh, I know. I just mean that the world is paying attention now. It's been quite a case. James, thank you for joining us today and telling that story. It's one that I think that our people really needed to hear.
Thanks for your hard work, and to all the small business owners out there, come invest in my city. We'll make it worth your while. We're vanilla ice cream government, low taxes, stable, predictable, great place to do business. A lot of hardworking folks here. Just a wonderful city. And if not, just come and boat, eat, drink, and be merry and spend money in my downtown.
All right, thank you,
Have a good
Jay.
one.
Always, yeah, he does do a great job. I always pay attention to that city because James is from my area, but early on in the pandemic and taking a lot of steps to try to accommodate small business and make changes in terms of municipal rules and processes there to accommodate what needed to be done in order to make the
We
best
turned
of
every street into a
that situation.
drive-through. We coned off lanes and made every business have a drive-through. So if you were a small business, you had a drive-through lane in front of your business. That helped people tremendously during the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, just really great responsiveness to what was needed, what was being requested of business. So thanks, great job.
All right. Sorry about my seasonal allergies.
No worries. All right,
Have a
thank
good
you.
one.
Thank you. So Sarah, we've got some other things that we're going to talk about here today, and we can maybe do a bit of a lightning round because there's a bunch of these things, but let's dig right in.
Well, let's keep on the OSHA fines topic for a minute. And the legislature did send a bill to the governor's desk about refunding of fines. Is there any chance that she's going to sign that?
Probably not. So basically what the legislature is saying is, look, there were fines that were issued under emergency order powers that the Supreme Court later struck down. OSHA has long held that they had other authority outside of the executive orders, and therefore they didn't need to refund or rescind those fines. So the legislature is saying, no, that's not right. These need to be refunded because the actions in the first place weren't constitutional according to the state Supreme Court. And so that's heading on I don't know that there's been an announcement yet. I'll be surprised if it gets signed. But naturally, as we have been advocating the whole time, that as soon as the Supreme Court took its actions, that they really did need to clear the slate for those businesses that were cited under those actions.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's move to OSHA now. We've covered the OSHA vaccine mandate in depth on this briefing, but I want you to talk a little bit about the potential for a small business mandate. So businesses with fewer than 100 employees, what could potentially be coming to the bulk of our members?
We had mentioned last week a bit about the public comment that asked for small businesses, or asked for a comment on applying the mandate to businesses with fewer than 100 employees. And the reason for doing that would be to open the door or kind of start the clock ticking for a permanent rule 6 months from now on businesses with fewer than 100 employees. So we will be doing a call to action pretty soon with instructions on how you comment to register opposition against that concept. But I thought I pulled out here a section of the emergency temporary standard that makes reference to those under 100 employees. It says OSHA chose a 100 employees threshold at this time because this is their emergency temporary standard, not my word, not an article. This is in the emergency temporary standard, verbatim. OSHA chose a 100 employees threshold at this time because the agency is confident that employers with 100 or more employees have the administrative capacity to implement the standards requirements promptly. It says OSHA will consider whether to extend the rule to smaller firms in public rulemaking that begins with the publication of this emergency rule. So what they're saying is that, this emergency temporary standard, it asks for comment on things, and you don't have to have a standard in the meantime in order to put a permanent rule in later on. You can't do a permanent rule until you had 6 months worth of comment. And so this is actually a pretty big risk. This is something I think we're going to have to really engage in, and engage at a pretty high level in order to send the message that, number one, we don't like the government telling business who they can and can't hire and what the terms of their employment must be, but also that the idea of expanding this to employers with fewer than 100 employees will be tremendously damaging, given the struggle that we already have in terms of workforce shortages.
Right, so stay tuned. We will have that call to action out here in the very near future, and we'll make sure we cover it on this briefing too, so you can make your voices heard. I know that the Michigan State Senate did file an amicus brief in opposition of the mandate in the 6th Circuit Court. So explain to us what that process looks like.
The Sixth Circuit is the one that we're in. So this is the one that we are paying close attention to. It's located in Cincinnati, but there are a lot of states that are included in that, including Michigan. So the state Senate passed a resolution that when it passed, it kind of took it an official position of the body of the Michigan State Senate. They then filed an amicus brief, and this is filing a position, registering an opinion in the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. Now, this is important because our Attorney General is not going to do that. So there are 27 other states where their Attorney General filed on behalf of the citizens or on behalf of the small businesses and employers, whoever in their state filed on behalf of them. That will not happen here, but the state Senate is doing it in order to make sure that there is registered opposition to the mandate in our state. Now, I read their amicus brief, and they talk about process, a lot about process, the idea of a process of making a rule that doesn't include any kind of input before implementation, but also about state sovereignty, that these types of rules are supposed to be set by state policy, not by federal policy. So that does actually still leave, I'm looking at a lot of the different amicus briefs that are being filed in the Sixth Circuit to find those that make arguments more directly to the cause of small businesses and the idea that they're looking for comment to apply it smaller, to apply it to employers with fewer employees. But then also we've got well over 1,000 members of the Small Business Association that have more than 100 employees that this will apply to. So this is this is an issue that we are also currently investigating. We don't need to duplicate efforts, but we do need to make sure that the small business argument is in the mix. And so as I look at these briefs that are coming in the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, one of the objectives, one of the things I'm looking for right now is to make sure that argument is made, and maybe if it's not adequately made, we'll look to do it ourselves.
Okay, good. So one more question on the vaccine mandate in our lightning round here. So we know that if you are a healthcare employee or a vendor, that you do have some specific rules you have to follow, but is it a new understanding or new information to me anyway, that they're not covered by OSHA, but actually a separate set of rules that might be a little bit more flexible? Is that right?
Yeah, ironically, the rules that apply to that were put out by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services are more flexible, more reasonable, frankly, than the OSHA rules. And you'd think that there would be more stringent in healthcare, right? But there's so many challenges with healthcare right now and shortages of employees. And of course, there isn't every industry, but they seem to be recognizing it more in the healthcare rules. So I thought let me just read a particular quote. Again, these are not my words. These are their words from the guidance that they put out with their rules. For Medicare and Medicaid. We believe it would be overly burdensome to mandate that each provider and supplier ensure that COVID-19 vaccination for all their employees who enter the facility. However, while facilities are not required to ensure vaccination of every individual, they may choose to extend vaccination requirements beyond what they're recommending. So what they're saying is, it's not reasonable that just any contractor of healthcare that enters on a premises, that you have to make sure that they're vaccinated. They gave an example of like an elevator inspector, or maybe you said a mail contractor and a billing service. A lot of contractors for healthcare that have no or minimal interaction. And so what they're saying is they're not covered under this Medicare and Medicaid rule. And so that's another one of the areas where I think it's going to be kind of difficult to explain why OSHA is so much more stringent than the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid.
All right, thanks for clearing that one up. All right, next topic is inflation. And I feel like every time I turn the TV on or open up a news feed, I'm seeing inflation, skimpflation, even meatflation. So what's the latest?
Unfortunately, October's numbers showed worse. So they had been, there was some hope that maybe they were peaking in September. Looked while they were way up still in September, but up at kind of the same rate as August, but actually went higher in October, highest that they have been since the recession back in 1991. There is growing concern across the board. In fact, it's been now the CPI, Consumer Price Index. It's being referred to as a Consumer Pain Index, and it's hitting people in every different type of way. And unfortunately, the last two recessions that we've had have been really coincided with when energy prices have shot up, and that's what we see happening today. So it's creating some risks and vulnerabilities. Unfortunately, from the federal government, we're hearing more of the same. In fact, I heard a representative of the White House explain that when asked, should you be looking for the Build Back Better plan still and all this extra money and spending it? And he said, well, it's important. We give more people money to deal with the high inflation. It seemed to be a total disconnect that just the federal government just dropping trillions extra so many times in a row is contributing to the inflation. So between the vaccine mandates, which could make supply chain and workforce shortages worse, and the federal spending that just seems to be egging on more inflation, it's getting rough out there. And I think some of the policymakers are starting to notice it, but apparently the White House is not yet willing to acknowledge it in a way that seems to really speak to the underlying causes of these problems.
Right. All right, do we have time for one more question?
Let's just do one more. I'll try to make it quick.
Okay, we can do it quick. So was there another charge in UIA fraud? And what were the charges there?
There was. So another person was charged. This person had a whole network of people that were putting false claims into the system. They got caught because they did it from just a small number of IP addresses and a small number of addresses in the Pontiac area. And so it got flagged, and they ended up catching this person about $1 million that they stole from the system, allegedly. But it looks like a really, really strong cut and dried case. So that work is still happening, and hopefully they get to every last one of them. This is an employer funded account, this trust fund. And so to the extent that they can find and make an example of those who stole from it, hopefully a deterrent from that happening in the future.
Absolutely. All right, well, we went a little bit over, but thank you all for joining us today. I think Rob will be back here on Monday. And in the meantime, have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week, everybody.